Hi, it's Nancy welcoming you to Garden Scroll. Look at this daylily. My mama used to say the last one is always the best one. It's July the 8th and I have a new flower today. This of course is a lily. I think this is called the stargazer lily. There's also some new dahlias in bloom. And I did spray the second time for those cucumber beetles and I guess Japanese beetles, some other type of beetle, that it's helped for sure, because you can tell these aren't all eaten up, and they would be if I hadn't have done something, because they can just take all this out. They can take a bloom out in a day or less than a day, and then not only do they do one, but they do all of them like that. My mums were totally shredded and ripped to pieces last fall, so I'm hoping we have some beautiful mums this year. I know I'll need to do the spray again, maybe not until late summer, early fall, but we'll see. We'll keep an eye out for those things. This is another new bloom. Let me get over here where I can get it. Where a lot of these lilies have a tendency to hang down, but I'm going to turn it where you can see that beautiful color. This tiny little piece is all I have left of my calabachoa, and it may not last much longer. I hope it does, but I went ahead and put some little clippings of some purple heart in here, because it's going to need something to fill that area out where the calabachoa died. And I did that in several places, not necessarily with the purple heart, but I did put some different clippings in there in hopes that it would fill out blank spots where a plant had died. I also clipped back a lot of my daisies. There's just a few of them left. Most of them had laid over because they got wet and heavy with our rains, and just not able to pick back up, and their season of time is actually leaving. And so I trimmed a bunch of this off last night. It looks so much better than it did. And I trimmed down the ballerina yarrow. It had laid down and was looking bad, so the garden looks a little bit fresher for all that work I did in it. And my husband helped me pick up my bundles last night after he came in from church, from driving the church van. So It's looking good this morning, or actually this afternoon. And also, I noticed a hummingbird on this tall phlox. I didn't know the hummingbirds loved them. I knew the butterflies did, but I was surprised to see a hummingbird just going from each little tiny bloom. And so they must love it too. Where my calabachoas died out, this is that beautiful purple one. I don't think there's any of it left. I did leave the root and a few little pieces of green in case it would come back, but I don't expect it to. And I did go ahead and put some of this trailing vinca or periwinkle in, so hopefully it will do well. It won't be my beautiful purple calabachoa that I wanted, but this is a wonder of a little plant, because for here in our Oklahoma heat, it usually just keeps right on going. And look at this purple impatiens. It's looking great too. Sometimes they do. I think actually all times they do, if you can keep them watered, keep them in the sun, and keep the roly-polies and snails out of them. But oh my goodness, that's what died in all these other pots. This one here was full. This little pot here was full of beautiful impatiens, and now I've got a couple of coleus in there, and a periwinkle, and then another little trailing periwinkle. And this pot here, I did it 2 or 3 times, and finally ended up with this. And I think the snails have maybe finally left it alone. I think they don't like the periwinkle, so that's great. I wish they didn't like my impatiens either. I moved one pot of my little Lenten rose, and I'm going to see how it does. If it does better under the weeping willow, I will move this one there too. This is the one I put in place of it, which is just where some volunteer seeds came up, and I planted one of those little pink strawberry fields plants there beside it too, that I had dug up from the back where I didn't want it. So hopefully I'll be able to save most. I would love to save all of my Lenten rose, but I just don't know if these are ever going to come out of it. This one though is seeming to do well. I don't know if it's because so far the snails have left this one alone more so, or I really don't know what caused my Lenten roses to just disappear, because they usually have that pretty foliage all summer long, even though their bloom is usually gone earlier in the spring, because they bloom one of, if not the first thing in the garden. My little homely homer, it's not only putting some bloom on, but it actually does have a few tomatoes, so that'll be great if it really makes tomatoes for me. As I've told you, my tomatoes usually make right when the frost comes on. Not a good combination. And I don't know when we're going to get around to getting this seed box thing fixed up. But I hope we're able to get that before too long. It's just so hot to do that type of work outside, but we'll see. And you've probably noticed I had a couple of pots back here, one with something dead in it and the other one I think was empty. But anyway, they may have both just had something that didn't make it, but I did go ahead and redo those pots also with just some little coleus and some little coleus clippings. And this is a columbine. Just the greenery will be in there, of course, until next spring. I'm still amazed at how this little coleus just came all the way up this trellis. The garden is beautiful, but the heat is on, and it's not pleasant to be out in the garden in this heat. It's just not at all. So I'll be looking forward to cooler days in the fall and hope it comes early, but hope it stays around and doesn't just usher in winter as soon as fall gets here, which it's been doing the last 4 years. It's been doing that. So I just keep thinking that we're due a time when we have a long and beautiful fall, and where we can come out and just really enjoy the garden. When the weather is beautiful, the garden is beautiful. Vice versa also, though. This is another little pot that I went ahead and put some more trailing vinca or periwinkle in. It's just not going to make it for me. My little bacopa is just so scraggly. And then, as I showed you, my calibrachoa, it's looking like this. So I don't know if it'll come out of it. I hope it will. Look at this beautiful bloom it still has. I wish it would live and keep living, but we'll just have to see. But if it doesn't, now there's at least one little trailing plant in there, and I can add some more if I need to. Of course, this is another spot where my pretty bacopa, there's a little sprig of it, but the biggest part of it died out, so it now has the trailing vinca or periwinkle in there. But I think this gives it a little bit more color. I love the idea of purple and purple, but as it turned out, it actually needed a little bit more, a little different color to set the purple off a bit. I'm so glad to see the coneflower back in the garden again. It's July the 10th, and I can't believe what a beautiful array of flowers there is in the garden. Sometimes by July the 10th, things are getting so hot that they're no longer living, or they're scorched. Not that there's not any of that going on, because there's still some. Like this poor little purple heart. I keep saying I've got to trim it back, and one day I'm going to trim this dead stuff off of this and put this where it gets more shade. I moved it over here closer to the house, which means it gets shade for a little bit longer in the day, but by the time the afternoon gets here, it's in full sun, and not a good idea at all. I'm having trouble finding shade since we lost our maple tree that was here. Even the little tree I got to replace it, which is a smoke bush, the pretty bright green smoke bush, it's also looking pretty pathetic in the heat. So I just came over here closer so you could see, but oh, I wish this was not happening, but hopefully it'll come out of that and still be a beauty. That's what I want it to do. But again, I'm just excited about so much color in the garden in July. Some of my little impatiens are even still doing great. Look at this one. So if the snails or roly-polies don't get started in them, they can do wonderfully. They're actually one of my favorite plants for shade. And then of course I would have to go with the hostas because they are perennial. They come back every year. They look great. The snails do like them though. That's the bad part about them. But so far they've actually been doing pretty good. They've been coming back each year. I have lost a few when they first got started, and they were tender, and the snails just loved them and went after them. I do have to keep something over here at all times to keep them off of them, and even then it doesn't always work. This little pot of white geranium also had impatiens on either side of it, but as you can see it's empty there now, except that I did plant seeds. I planted a bunch more seeds. It takes forever to plant seeds. I have to go through my seeds and find the ones I want and then put them in and just take care of all that as I go, and it just seems to take such a long time to do seeds. But I did it again because I had lost so many, and because some of my seeds did not come up, didn't go ahead and germinate or sprout, and so I just needed to do it again, and I've got that done now, which it may not work again either, but it may, so I'm going to hope that it will, and just plan on that until I see otherwise, and hopefully I won't see otherwise. Hopefully they will sprout and become beautiful. Most of the ones I planted were the zinnias. It doesn't take them too awfully long to get going, and they are beautiful. Beautiful in the summer, beautiful in the fall. So look at all this wonderful, wonderful color. I ordered another Rex begonia, or two, maybe even three, and they have not come in yet, so I'm a little bit concerned about those. It's a little late for them to be coming in now. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess they assume everybody uses those inside, but since I do terrible with inside plants and I at least have some luck with outside plants, I put mine outside. All of my house plants go outside. Like this pretty little shrimp plant or candle plant. And they do well outside. Well, you can tell this one's not doing well at all. This is another one I need to get in a better shade. I guess, I'm not sure what's wrong with this. It probably just needs some better shade. I know I at least need to try that for it and see if that will make a difference. Yesterday I actually took this little pot out from where it was and put it here, and right now it's actually in the sun too, but I think in the afternoon it has some shade on this. At least it did yesterday when I put it here, so hopefully I'll need to take a look at this and see excuse me, and see if that will if this is a good spot for it. But it's got to be better than where I had it, because it was fading out at the end of each day. Remember, I had this pretty Terenia plant, and there's another dark blue, almost navy blue back there, and I had that same pattern going in this little pot, and the snails and roly-polies destroyed it. So I planted some other things in here, but look, they're actually coming up and doing good. This is a little transplant, this little Strawberry Fields in pink, and then I've got a little zinnia coming up there. I think that right beside it is a little alyssum, and then again over right down here. So that might be enough to make it look really pretty. And then my pretty Kong coleus is doing well there too. It has a long ways to go to get big and really look like a Kong coleus, but I think it may have a chance to do that. My elephant ear is coming right along, and you can see that it's had some heat that it didn't like too, but it seems to be doing all right, as well as this pretty little sweet potato vine, and I had it in the window over winter, so that's another thing that overwintered for me. I always love it when they make it through the winter, because you know, you put a lot of work into changing that water out every week and just keeping an eye on them for things like mealy bugs and just taking care of them through the winter. So it's wonderful to have something that lives and does well the next season. I might have to change that to hostas being my first and impatiens being my second, simply because the hostas come back, they're perennial, they come back every year, whereas the little coleus do not. But this one I saved through the winter in a glass too, and it's doing well right now, and I'm thinking that it will do a whole lot better. I think it's going to just spill out, trail over, and be so much I'll need to clip some of this off before the season is over. And my zinnias are starting to bloom. I love zinnias. So bright and cheery and pretty. They just keep on coming and coming, and you clip them off and they put on another bloom. One fixing to open right here also. My little plumeria is still trying to put on something there at the top of it, so hopefully it'll keep going, and one day we'll come out here and just have something beautiful there. And I think this right beside it that's growing up here is a little tree, so I'm pulling that up right now. It doesn't need to be taking the nutrients and the space away from my plumeria. And I've been keeping this pretty little crown of thorns cactus over here on the porch out of sight, because it gets shade there, and I almost killed this one year because I thought cactus sun, but this is a shade cactus, and I'm going to pull it out and get a better look at it for you so you can see its beauty. So I hope you can see it a little better here, because it's so pretty. I just love this color. And I noticed a lighter one, and it's still like this same color but pale, and so I want it to, one of these days when I see it again, I'll try to purchase that so I can have two of them. This has done well for me, even though, you know, I do terrible on houseplants, and when I bring this in, it does get to looking pretty pathetic, but when I take it back outside, it just loves it and decides to go again. And the fact that it lives through the winter is enough to make me happy. You'd almost think, oh, that doesn't look like a cactus, but if you look at the stem, you realize, yeah, it does look like a cactus. And I noticed yesterday how this beautiful little alyssum is just setting this pot off. It was already pretty, but that little white, like lacy look to it is just gorgeous. I just love it. And that pretty purple Persian shield, it's still purple for me. As you know, mine has a tendency to turn brown, but it is still purple and it looks great just on the other side of this pretty little pale purple impatiens that the snails for some reason left alone. Whereas right beside it, this little pot I filled, and after the 4th time of filling it up, I could no longer find impatiens, and I just had to give up on them anyway. So what's in there now is coleus and periwinkle, including one little trailing periwinkle, which I love in pots. I love to see it trailing over the edges. Like this pretty little wandering Jew, fills out the pot and then trails over the edges, and I just like the look of that. This is another pot I had to fill up so many times, and I finally just ended up taking all the dead impatiens out for however many times it was, at least 3, maybe 4 on this one too. But it's full of impatiens, and I'm sorry, not impatiens, no more impatiens, but periwinkle, full of periwinkle and coleus and a little purslane moth. I also put the trailing periwinkle here where the pretty calabachoa was, and so now that this is getting big and pretty and you can see the purple in it, doesn't have purple to go with it. I may have to end up putting some purple heart starts in here with the trailing periwinkle, and I think that would be a great idea. I just now thought of that, and I need to do that. There are still daylilies in the garden. They'll probably be gone by the end of this month, but right now there's still several of them in the garden. And this little tiger lily is also blooming. This little strawberry pot of impatiens is one of my favorites in the garden. And I was talking about loving how much color is in the garden at this time of season, right when I was looking at the white impatiens. But I read somewhere one time that to remember that green is a color too. And so I guess we'll have to remember that white is a color too. Because it's beautiful in the garden, it's just like lights in the garden. But I'm loving this color. I love color. If you've seen any of my posts, I love color. I did put some little, I think I may have already told you, but I did put some little purple heart clips in here too, and I think they will fill out and look great. It doesn't take them long to go ahead and fill out once they get going. Look at this little color Saurus. Isn't it beautiful? And because I took some clippings off of it, it has branched out and just made so many stems and just filled out so beautifully. So don't be too afraid to go ahead and clip some of your beautiful clematis off. I mean, not clematis, but coleus off, because it will just branch out and be beautiful, more beautiful than it would have been if it would have just grown tall and spindly. So just go ahead and clip it off and it'll be worth it. But speaking of daylilies still being in the garden, just look at this little array of beautiful daylilies. I just wanted to show you some of the color in the garden. I'm just amazed that it's so colorful and so pretty. This year, you know, a lot of it is because of me laying those hoses and poking holes in them where they get water for a longer length of time, and I can keep them watered more evenly, and they just look so much better than they have been looking in previous years. And I'm so glad. And not only that, but it helps me a whole lot too. Even though I am still out here from 2.5 to 3 hours a day just watering the pots, but I just don't think the garden would be the same or as lovely, or as, it would just feel like it was missing something if it didn't have all the pretty pots that bring your eye upward, and I can fill with annuals that stay in color and just are so pretty. I would miss them so much if they weren't here. But now that the pretty tall phlox is blooming everywhere, and all the other flowers that were blooming, the lilies and the dahlias, and just the annuals that are in the pots, and they're all blooming, and it just makes for a beautiful array of color and bloom. Some of my chrysanthemums are blooming. We'll see if these are still here or will bloom again for fall, and I'm not sure that they will, but we'll see. The little alyssum that I planted from seed is growing up in this pot too and looking good. When I planted seeds yesterday, I planted a few in here. I'm just so afraid that it's just going to be scraggly all summer if I don't. I was hoping this pretty little fanflower and my calabacho would take off and go, but I really am not expecting them to. But oh, I wish they would still. If they do that, it'd be great. But I did plant some little zinnias in here too. as well as in here, even though this is doing well. But if you look at the top side of it, you can see that it's not. So I put a few little impatiens in there too. And the same with my pretty bacopa. Look at those pretty little flowers, and yet it just keeps dying. Little bits of it every day dies, and I need to come out and get the rest of that. I clipped some off yesterday, but it needs some more clipped off today. It's just going away. So there, I got the little purple heart cuttings in there, and it looks better already. And I did trim off all the dead parts from my purple heart, and I put it over here under this little snowball bush where you can't see it, where it can't be seen, but at least maybe it won't be burned anymore either. Look what else I found blooming today. Aren't they beautiful? And there's my little red birds in a tree. Gone again. I don't know how many times I've tried it. I've tried it so many times I've lost count. But I will try it again, because I do believe that this little plant will be a beauty once I finally get it going and established in the garden. Please be sure to like and to subscribe to the channel.